Please join me in welcoming Lamarcus to the stage so we can hear his essay.
The history of student protests reveals tension between the principles of free speech and institutional authority. These protests, often driven by the passion of young people, reflect a societal debate about justice, equality, and individual rights. From civil rights to social justice, students have historically been at the forefront of movements challenging the status quo. However, their activism sometimes collides with institutional rules and expectations, raising questions about the limits of free speech and the role of universities in fostering both dialogue and order. So basically, I feel like everyone has free speech, but there's a limit to what you can say. Students' protests are a vital part of our society. They provide young people a platform to express dissent, challenge injustices, and demand accountability. Many of the most significant societal changes in history have been fueled by student led movements. For instance, the Civil Rights Movement in the United States saw students participating in sit ins and march to challenge segregations and racial injustice. Similarly, the Vietnam War of the protests in 1960 and 1970 drew significant energy from college campuses as students voiced their opposition to conscript and military intervention. More recently, protests like March of Our Lives against gun violence, climate strikes inspired Greta Thunberg, and movements for racial justice after the murder of George Floyd have highlighted the power of students' activism. These movements are not only about policy change, but also about raising awareness and sparking conversations about pressing issues. While universities are often seen as bastions of free thought and expression, they also have a responsibility to maintain order and ensure a conducive environment for education. This dual mandate can create friction when students engage in protests that disrupt classes, occupy administrative buildings, or violate campus policies. Institutions must then decide how to respond, balancing the rights to free speech with their duty to uphold rules and ensure the safety and well-being of all students. The First Amendment protects free speech in the United States, but its application wait, but its implicit in university setting is not absolute. Public universities, as government entitles, are are bound by constitutional free speech protections. Private universities, on the other hand, have more leeway to set their policies, although many still emphasize free speech as a core value. Regardless of legal distinctions, universities often face criticism for their being too permissive or too restrictive in their responses to protests. In some cases, universities have taken disciplinary actions, such as suspensions or expulsions, against students who refuse to comply with warnings to end their protest. These actions are often justified by citing violations of campus policies, such as trespassing, disrupting classes, and endangering public safety. However, such measurements can be controversial as they as they are perceived by some of the stifling dissent and punishing activism. For example, in 2015, the University of Missouri faced national attention after students and faculty members organized protests over racial inequality on campus. The protests include a hunger strike, a boycott by the football team. While the university eventually addressed some of the demands, the administration also faced criticism for handling the protests, including allegations of attempting to suppress dissent. Similarly, at the University of California, Berkeley, a bastion of free speech activism in the 1960s, students protested controversial speakers or tuition hikes have occasionally faced disciplinary actions. In 2017, protests against a scheduled speech by Milo Milo turned violent, leading to property damage, and significant debates over the limits of protest. The university commended the violence and implemented stricter policies on campus events, sparking concerns about potential overreach. The tension between free speech and institutional authority raised complex questions about the role of universities in society. On the other hand, universities are expected to be spaces where ideas can freely express and debate. Suppressing protests can undermine the ideal, stifling student voices and discouraging civic engagement. On the other hand, universities must also ensure that protests do not disrupt the educational mission, threaten public safety, or infringe on others. Critics of disciplinary actions argue that disproportionality targets marginalized groups and silence dissent voices. For instance, students advocating for racial justice, LGBTQ rights, or environmental protections may face harsher scrutiny compared to protests aligned with mainstream or institutional values. These selective enforcements can perpetuate system inequalities and discourage meaningful activisms. Conversely, proponents of institutional authority and institutional authority argue that universities have responsibility to maintain order and enforce rules. Allowing protests to go unchecked can create chaos, disrupt academic activities, and even endanger participants. Universities must strike balance, ensuring that protests are conducted responsibly and within the bound of laws. Students' protests are a powerful expression of democratic values and are essential parts of the university experience. They challenge institutions to reflect on their values, adapt to social changes, and engage in meaningful dialogue with their communities. However, the tension between free speech and institutional authority is a complex and ongoing debate that requires careful navigation. By fostering an environment that respects free speech while upholding rules and ensuring the safety and well-being of all students, universities can strike a balance that honors their dual mission. Through dialogue, transparency, and proportionalities, institutions can support students' activism while maintaining order, ensuring that the campus remains vibrant spaces for learning, growth, and social change.